So now that we actually we spoke about the different ways to actually advertise online, we spoke about comparing the media. We spoke about comparing the different options online to some extent. We spoke about influential marketing. I guess now is the time for brands to actually write what we call the poem. Poem is an acronym that stands for each brand needs to have and to coordinate its paid online marketing strategy, media strategy, that stands for the P. Coordinate its own point of contacts for own media and coordinate its earned media. And accordingly, it's the ability of the brand to actually connect all the dots together between paid media, own media being websites, Facebook pages, for example, and eventually brands hope that will be talked about by people online in social network, for example, or driven by the work of influencers. I guess it's the time for brands to actually coordinate all that through one thing that is called the path to purchase. And the path to purchase, I'm sure you probably heard about that, means that before you actually move from being aware to buying, there are a number of things that are going to be happening. You need to move from the different stage of knowing the brand, being aware of it, having a consideration, an image of it, and then move to a stage of buying it. Historically speaking, companies such as Procter & Gamble became very famous to say that all the marketings that we do has no value if we do not manage to be critical at what they call at that time, which was in their vocabulary, first moment of truth. The first moment of truth for Procter & Gamble was the first encounter of the brand, the product, and the consumer. Before the internet, and for Procter, this was happening in supermarket, in front of the shelves. And indeed, if consumers didn't know enough about the brand, knowing that it usually takes less than 5 seconds to decide which product to put in your basket in a supermarket, if you lose this opportunity to reconnect people to memories that they may have learned about advertising and other marketing consideration, you may lose the opportunity to actually sell the product to the customers. And they actually became very famous in their ability to optimize everything from pushing people to go to the store, then to actually push people to actually connect to their memories to put the product in their basket. And they call that the first moment of truth. But in fact, when the internet really came on strongly, I guess Google started to be very popular with something they call ZMOT. ZMOT relates for not so much first moment of truth, but zero moment of truth. I will provide the link, and the link is already provided in your slides, by the way, if you want to be going to that afterwards. But basically, the message is to say, consumers now do not prepare or decide to actually buy the product when they see the product for the first time in store. But what's happening is there is a lot of preparation before they actually go in store, if they ever go into the store, thanks to the ability of collecting information, comparing possibilities, talking with others, as we've been discussing for influential marketing, before they actually getting to the store to actually buy the product. And that's the reason why it becomes so critical to map all touch points and to be able to understand the footprints that are available online to understand the path to purchase of a given consumer, moving from awareness to asking recommendation to acting, buying, to act again, or potentially potentially advocate about the product. So what we usually do is when we map a path to purchases, what we do is we try to actually organize key step in that process. In this example, it's not so much called, if there are 5 steps moving from research to shopping to buying, to picking up, and to getting service. And then we laid down on the side here all the roles that every touch points, online or offline, could have in my ability to be used through the process of moving closer and closer to the product and being bought. And you see in this case, we have a path where, in fact, for that specific example, we try to actually organize the typical flow that an average consumer goes on to actually get going in the process. The process can be organized the way you want, but here is, I will give you later on a typical grid you can use to actually build these steps. And this grid looks like something like this, where you have the different step, being aware. So what's going to be the role of each media in that process? Ask or start considering the options, which options are available, which media could be useful to actually push people to actually move from simply being aware to actually consider the brand. Then which options will be leveraged to actually move from considering to buying. Then which options should be available to actually, for me to actually buy again from me. And finally, if I do advocate and I'm a fan of the product, what should be the avenue where I should allow my consumers to do so. In all cases, what is going to be important for marketers is to understand, in order to build this grid, to understand the different social footprints or search footprints or site and shop footprints that consumers are actually leaving to actually build such a grid. In other words, what I mean by social footprints are typically comments that I found on social networks. Social networks are a great avenue to either help brands understand what are people doing and speaking about when they prepare their buying. So back to that first step here, when they start getting awareness, maybe they got initial awareness from television, from offline media, and then they go to blogs. And then in blogs or in social networks, what kind of information should I leave or should I make available for people to actually find this information useful as they become aware of the product? Then what type of things should be important, specifically recommendations, for example, or advices from others to potentially shape your consideration about the product, etc., etc., etc. Exactly in the same fashion, search footprints are very important assets. What we mean by search footprints are simply the number of times someone is typing a keyword. For you to understand how, for example, how popular is a keyword and a given product category in the market. And I'm going to give you an example in a minute. So we'll get back into the search footprints, and Google will be a great help to understand the dynamic around keywords that consumers type. For us to understand if they type, for example, temporary tattoos or tatouage temporaire in French, how likely and what's the level of interest as measured by the level of search that could translate back in potential markets or potential abilities of people to buy. Okay. Social footprint, search footprints, and finally, site and shop footprints are, I relate to that as being cookies. Once people start to search for temporary tattoos, for example, online, they're going to be considering different options. And then maybe they're going to be visiting your website if you sell temporary tattoos online. And accordingly, it will be important for you to understand which keywords they type to come in, where are they going, what other type of website are they visiting potentially to actually gather this information for you to start understanding your market dynamic, not only in terms of building your path to purchase, as we just explained here, but also start understanding the dynamic in terms of how big is your market online. And this is what I would like to start doing with you. I'm going to be giving you an intro of how can we actually try to get an understanding of, and that's the case study you're going to be working on, of how big a market could be and how to measure a market in terms of its volume and value. The market I want you to spend time on in the next few minutes, and that will be the result I would like you to produce, is that is trying to evaluate the size of the market for temporary tattoos in France. And obviously, I know that you don't speak French, but the only thing you need to know is actually how to spell temporary tattoos, and I'm going to be doing that with you. If there are any questions, I'll answer the question after the demo per se. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be opening a new window, and this new window will be typically I'm going to be going online. I'm going to be acting as an average consumer interested in potentially finding out more about temporary tattoos in France. I got the impression that I'm not offline. I know I'm online. Do you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going on Google if Google allows me to go. Okay. Now I can share my screen back. Okay. Okay. Google. Let's suppose I'm acting as an average person interested in temporary tattoos. Okay. So to make things more simple, because you're located in France, you'll get better insights. Most of you are located in France, but that's okay if you're not. I'm going to google.fr, okay? And in French, temporary tattoo is spelled this way. It's called Tatouage Temporaire. So I'm typing and I'm searching for Tatouage Temporaire. Okay. And I'm going to be starting to get insights on what are the footprints that searches provide me and Google provide me. So first of all, it's really interesting because without knowing anything about the product category, I figured that this is a marketed category. It's a marketed category because we have 1, 2, annonce stands for ads, 1, 2, 3, 4, we have 4 advertisers that are ready to pay for me to click on their websites. So it's a marketed category from that standpoint. And look here, I also have offers coming from what is called Google Shopping that shows indeed that although it sounds silly, but temporary tattoo is a marketed category even during the current period. And maybe it's because recently there was Halloween, and maybe some people wanted to get some temp tattoo to actually celebrate Halloween. But first of all, yes, indeed, there are people willing to buy my click to get on their website, at least 4 ads, as well as Google Shopping available. The second thing, what I'm looking at here is the number of results that Google gives me back. I'm not sure that you ever paid attention to that, but it gives an indication of how big, or naturally, for Google, it's the number of pages that do index the keyword or the key expression that I just typed, tatouage temporaire. Yeah. So accordingly, what I'm seeing here is there are about 12 million pages indexed by Google. Just to give you an example, if I'm, for example, typing shoe sport chaussures sport, for example, in French, I guess sport shoes are probably more popular than temporary tattoos. And naturally speaking, what you see here is a move from 12 million for temporary tattoos to about 89 million results for sport shoes to be present on Google. And again, not surprisingly, you see again that sport shoes, the simple expression with no brand, is also again marketed. Why? Because you have Google shopping options available, and you have again advertising available here with 1 and 2 ads. But back to my example, to Tatouage Temporaire, I'm learning that indeed it's indeed seems to be marketed, and some advertisers are ready to buy my click to get on that, to get there. But now I'm going to be starting to learn better about potentially I would say the market dynamic around temporary tatouage temporaire. And to do so, maybe some of you are familiar with something that is sometimes used, which is Google Trends. And I'm going to on the French Google Trends, and there is a Google Trend for every country. And for the ones that don't know Google Trends, it's simply something from Google where I'm going to be typing my expression, my keyword. In my case, is tatouage temporaire. Yeah. And I'm going to be given back by Google the shape of searches through time for that expression. And you see, I guess we are at the beginning of October, and it's giving me by default results on a 12-month period. But I could actually, for example, here take the last 5 years. And you see that indeed, there seems to be, it's not a flat market. What I mean by not a flat market, we see peaks happening, and you see apparently the highest peak, the highest level of demand of searches around tatouage temporaire or temporary tattoos was in July 2019. But if I look at the other peaks, they happen in June, July, August, and here it's June, August. Here it's May, June, July, August, and the same is true here, July, August, etc., etc. So it simply means that apparently the number of searches around tatouage temporaire seems to be more popular during the summer season, which, when you think about it, doesn't, is quite interesting, because it's probably indeed people are actually potentially more nude during the summertime, and as such, they may be willing to actually tattoo themselves temporarily by using temporary tattoos during that season. And what's really interesting here is the way it works here, the index, it's simply an index varying from 0 to 100, and the 100 is actually indexed at a time where Google, for example, here in June, during week of June 9 to 15 of June 2019, the index is 13. So that means that we probably get only 10% of all the searches we got in a 5-year period that did happen during the week of June 2019. If I'm actually doing that and using a different scales, looking for the last 12 months, for example, I'm learning that during 2020, so that was the last 12 months, the highest level of searches was in the week starting August 16, whereas currently, why the highest? Because we got an index of 100. And if I'm looking at during that week, we only have 40% of all searches because the index is 38 here, that do happen in November. Okay, so that means, back to my point, that indeed there are people searching for, but people, there are brands ready to market their offers. Why? Because they place advertising. But obviously, what I learned as well here is, apparently, indeed, if people go online and search, they're probably using Google to buy. So it's an entry point to probably gather information back to my path to purchase. But also, what I'm learning here is the searches are less popular in November than during last summer, and specifically the week of August we just discussed before, because I have an index of 38% here, whereas 100%, the most important level of searches were weeks starting the 16th of August this year. So now the question is, this is an index, but only provides me a trend. I don't know the actual number of searches that happened during that time. It will be interesting for me to know, because if I manage to get the number of searches could work as a very good proxy, as a very good indication or indicator of the potential number of people that are interested in buying this product. Okay. So in order to do so, what I'm going to be doing, I could get that information from Google AdWords that provides a Google keyword planner for me to be able to actually get an understanding of how popular are the key search terms. By the way, remember, I made available on the dashboard a tutorial for the ones that don't know how to Google AdWords work. For you to get familiar with that, I would highly recommend you that you get familiar with that by going through the tutorial. But to carry on the exercise here, you don't need Google AdWords, although you could get the information about the number of searches on Google AdWords. I'm going to be going to a website called Yooda. Yooda, it's spelled YOODA.fr. And I'm just going to be creating an account. You could create an account for yourself later on. I have my account, so I'm going to be going to my account. I'm going to be connecting myself to my account. Yooda is, in its basic free version, provides information about the number of people that actually search for a given keyword. And in order to get that for temporary tattoo, I'm going to be going to products. I'm going to be going to insights. Okay. So I'm going there. And once I'm getting insights, I'm going to be selecting Market Explorer, because I want to explore the market of the keywords. And the keyword I want to explore is obviously tatouage temporaire in French, temporary tattoo in English. Okay. And I'm going to be exploring the number of searches for that keyword. The page is loading. And what I'm learning here is the following. And obviously, you will have time to investigate and ask me questions afterwards. I'm learning that as of today, which is November, the first week of November, the way Yooda works, it provides me the number of searches that happen during the previous month, during the month of October. So I'm learning here that during the month of October, there were about roughly 150,000 searches for expressions that relate to temporary tattoo, as spelled here, tatouage temporaire. But in fact, they're mixing all the expression around tatouage temporaire. There is another way to actually say that in French, tatouage éphémère, that happens to be, as you see, more importantly typed or search, okay? But when you sum up all these expressions with all the results, what I'm learning here, it's add up to 152,120 for a total of 525 expressions. So in other words, using that as a proxy, I'm learning that as of October or early November, I got in the month of October around 152,000 searches, actual absolute searches in France, around the expression temporary tattoos and similar expression that relate to the same category. So in other words, now if I'm going back to Google Trends results that I showed before, what I'm actually learning is that for the month of October, starting around here, my index is around 28, depending, so it's 28 plus 12 is 40, so that makes 20, 27, 25, 38. So that's November. So I'm learning that roughly, to make things simple, I'm probably got an index of 25 for the month of October. So 25 corresponds to 152,000 searches. Okay, so from there, I'm going to be able to deduct that probably here, when it was the week of 16th of August, where I got 100, and probably for the full week of August, since I'm getting an index of 100 and here an average of 25 for 152,000 searches, I'm probably getting 152,000 multiplied by 4. Why? Because I'm getting an index of 25 for October, an index of 100 for August. I'm getting 152,000 multiplied by 4. I'm probably getting around 600,000 inquiry and searches for the month of August, roughly. So what I'm going to be doing is, in order to actually calculate the number of searches I'm getting every month, I'm going to be using the simple trick that I show you for me to consolidate my data and calculate month to month for a year how many searches did I get. Because if I manage to add up all these searches all together, I will get an annual volume of searches for temporary tattoos. And why is the annual number of searches so useful? Because then if people are searching for temporary tattoos, there is a good probability that these people will most likely buy from the temporary tattoos. The question becomes is, okay, out of all the people searching, how many of them are buying? And I need to probably then at that stage start setting up hypotheses in terms of how many people are buying from the total searches for me to start calculating the number of buyers to get a market estimate of the number of tattoos sold. That's my volume. If I multiply it by the average price, I will get an understanding of the market, not only in terms of volume, but also in terms of value. So this is what I wanted to share. I'm sure you have questions. I know I went fast, but I'm happy to actually answer a question here at that stage for you to get an understanding of what I'm going to be asking you to do. Basically, I'm going to be asking you to actually estimate the size of the market for temporary tattoos for France using the process I just described. And before you ask me a question, I'm going to be moving back to my PowerPoint. And what I would like you to actually work on is applying the method that I just described, which is basically using Google Trends and using Yooda by creating an account, is calculate back week after week, month after month, the number of searches, and create an estimate of how big is the market for temporary tattoos in France in terms of volume, the volume of a market being the number of products that are actually sold on that market, and the market value being the number of products sold multiplied by the average price, which, in other words, the revenue generated by selling tattoos online. That's it. I'm sure you have questions. I probably went very, very fast, but I'm happy to answer questions if you have any now.
Professor, am I allowed to leave you for now, please?
Yes, you are allowed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ruslan. What about the others? Do you have any question? Or are you totally lost?
Should be okay, at least for me.
Yeah.
I have worked before with like looking up such statistics.
Yeah, so it helps for the ones that did indeed worked on that before. What about the others? I'm gonna be obviously walking you through what I'm expecting, trying to give an example in a few, but before I do so, do you have any questions? Or was it clear? Did you follow the demo?
Yeah.
Do you see the interest of doing such a thing?
Yes, to evaluate the volume of people that might be interested. Yeah.
Yeah. And it works. It doesn't work every time, but it's pretty interesting to do that. And I've been using that quite often in the past. And not that I'm smart, but I could sound smart with clients, because sometimes I know more about the market dynamics and the way people buy, because from the same approaches, I could build the path to purchase grid that I explained before, obviously, and as a way to demonstrate the value of using things like that to actually understand market dynamics. What I'm going to be trying to do is actually I'm going to try to share with you the kind of thing that I believe you should be developing in the next hour or so, and the thing that you should consider building to actually get to solve the problem that I just pointed you towards. So I'm going to be sharing typically a grid that you should consider building to get to indeed solving the problem. I assume you see my Excel sheet. Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, the grid I'm using does not exactly the same numbers that I demonstrated with. Why? Because this grid is probably about a year old or so. Okay. So as we got here in October, from my example, 152,000, when I did this grid, it was 100,000 searches as coming from Yooda. You get me? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so from that standpoint, what I did here is I use a multiple of as it came out from Google Trends. Using the trick I show you, month to month, I evaluated how big it is, how big is the index in reference to my reference point that was October in this case, where I learned that in October I got 4 times less queries than in August of this year. And that's allow me to actually calculate for every month of the year the number of searches. By doing so, I managed to add up and calculate the total number of volume searches for the year. Yeah, and you have this number here. So that's basically what I explained before, okay? But what needs to be done next is probably more important. What I mean by that is I need to move from searches to actual buying, which is obviously because when you might evaluate a market in terms of volume, searches may be a good proxy, but you need to approximate from the searches how many people will actually buy. Okay. And to do so, you need to come up with, what you could call conversion rates. In fact, in e-commerce, whatever is the industry, the average conversion is low. It's 2 to 3%. But the reason I set the stages as high here is because when I did the research, I went online on the different websites, tattoos, and I've seen that the average price of a tattoo was about €6. This is what I put here. And I invite you to do so, because by doing so, you'll understand the market dynamics. The first natural results will actually show the leading competitors. You'll understand what kind of products they sell, what's the average price they sell. So the reason I said 25% here is because I guess people that do search for online tattoos are specifically motivated to look for. The case I'm sharing here is a real case study that I did many years back with a student that had that was selling tattoos online. It was one of the first ones to do that 8 years ago, and he was actually making a lot of money. Why? Because at that time he was the only one doing that, one of the only one doing that. And we were curious to actually understand the trend and if it was going to be growing. And the trend indeed grew through time, as the Google Trends show before. But the point that I want to make here about the price and the conversion rate is when you set your conversion rate, you need to actually figure out how big is the problem for people to make a mistake if they buy the product. In other words, the more expensive is the product, the lower maybe the conversion rates. But in our case, if you look and go online and type temporary tattoo, specifically, for example, in the summer period, you're probably very motivated to get and to buy a temporary tattoo. As such, if you're very motivated, your conversion may be probably high. Second type of information, when you find out that an average tattoo price is €5 to €6, if you really want it, I don't think it's going to be a problem for you to put €5 or €6. So that's the reason why I decided to set up 3 hypotheses. One low hypothesis where I set a 25% conversion rate, a 50% conversion rate, and a high conversion rate, but it's up to you to decide. Maybe things change, maybe prices increase between 2 years from now and today. It's up for you to actually decide. So I set up an initial conversion rate 25%. I wanted also to include among the people that bought the first time, how many of them are actually buying again? Again, it's totally, I don't know. The thing I could do is I could potentially go to a shop, physical shop, and actually ask the vendor, if you do sell tattoos, I'm sure that if the people asking for tattoos, if they come and ask, they're probably very motivated to buy. So that will give you an indication of the conversion rate. But maybe it will give you an indication of repurchase rate of the people that bought once. How many people did buy again? I didn't know. I didn't want to ask something I don't think is high, because maybe people are using it for parties. Maybe among you, some people have been using that during the summertime to go to parties and to look trendier. I don't know. But all in one, I managed through my simple rates to actually calculate a volume trial using, again, what I got here in terms of total volume searches annually. I got my volume trial. I got my volume repeat, multiplying the trial by the purchase rate, and then I get my total volume here when I add up volume of trial and repeat, and I have a low hypothesis, which is basically 900,000 tattoos are sold online annually to up to here 2.9. So the market could be 3 times bigger. And as such, after that, I could apply an average price, and I get indeed an estimate for my market value that is varying from 5.5 million to 18 million. I believe 18 million is too big. But the reason I'm doing high, medium, and low hypothesis is because when you do something and launch something, you want to get an understanding of how big could be the market and how trustful is the information you could gather. My guess is even with a low hypothesis, the market is quite big. 5-6 million euros is huge still. When you sell an average of 6 euros, you don't know the info, but you can find tattoos to sell online on AliExpress, for example, and you can pay them as low as 50, less than 50 cents. So that means that if you resell these tattoos for an average of 5 to 6 euros, you make 10 times the profit of your cost. Although the market may not be huge in terms of absolute volume, the profit attached to it could be indeed tremendous. And that's what one of my students at that time was doing, and he was actually being very wealthy. It was 7-8 years ago. He was in second year, and he was actually living very comfortable, in a very comfortable way. He was selling to individuals, and soon after he had some demand coming, some inquiries coming from companies, by the way, but wanted to do specific tattoos for in-company events, and is still in business actually, and still selling his tattoos. And that's the way for example, in this game, I'm calculating and estimating total volume in terms of market value in volume, and in terms of value, I mean by euros, if in my example, multiply by 6, the average price. That's what I wanted to share. Do you have any questions before you actually get into the process for you to get an estimate of the market as for 2020? Is it clear what you have to do? Yeah.
Yeah, can you share this Excel sheet with us though, so we can?
No, I cannot share the Excel sheet with you, because it will take you 2 minutes for you to do it, and I want you to spend more time on it and use your brain.
Okay.
Okay, and usually I don't share what I did, because given that I wanted, it's probably the last time we see each other, I wanted to give an orientation. You need to rebuild the grid per se. But if you have no additional question, I have another set of questions that I will ask you to consider once you estimated your market. Before I move to my next set of questions, do you have any question at this stage?
I have a question.
I'll be available later as well to answer. Yes, go ahead, Andrea.
But why did you choose the 25%, 50, and jump out to 70? Because I mean, like 25 and 50, one is the half of another, but why 70%?
Why not? This is guesswork, but guesswork needs, in my case, I said at the bare minimum, my lowest rate is 1 out of 4. The medium range is 1 out of 2. And after that, maybe 75% or 80% is too much when I say 70%, but you could have a different logic. It's up to you.
Okay.
But when I say up to you, this is where the manager comes into place.
Okay.
You understand when I say the manager, I did that on my own myself, but you're going to be working in groups. And I guess this is where the discussion between your peer groups would be useful. And by doing so, before you get into calculating the working on the grid itself, the first thing that I will ask you to do is actually get to know the market better. When I say get to know the market better, go back on Google, look at the results that come in, and look at what are the products sold. Do you have the impression that they get a lot of traffic? Try to understand the market dynamics and put yourself back into the average consumer shoes, browsing online, understanding the market, and preparing your shopping. Okay?
Okay.
What I'm asking you to do is not an exercise that it's real time, it's real life stuff here. Because usually I'm getting the question, you know, why did you use that? I said, because I use my mind and I'm trying to battle hypothesis with my logic. I said before, you know, the average consumer conversion is 2 to 3%. But I knew for a fact, given that people, if they search for that and, you know, the price involved is only 5 to 6 euros, I'm sure it's only not, it's going to be only converting at 2%. There is no way, because I don't know, maybe some of you bought or did wear temporary tattoos in the past or not?
Yes.
Okay. What
When
did
I
you
was
do
a little girl.
Same.
when you were a little girl? And usually that's the answer I get. But temporary tattoos, in this case, are used by adults. But if I do use it, if I go online to search for, it's probably because they have a big intention to do it. Whatever is the reason. Summer is the reason, and they want to look trendy. And I've seen girls and boys actually wearing temp tattoo during the party. They want to be trendy. So as such, my thinking is to say, okay, if I go online, search, go on a site, I'm very motivated to buy. So I'll be probably moving from 2% to 25% at least. Okay, etc., etc. Okay, clear?
Crystal clear.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, now another set of questions. When I say another set of questions, I'm going to be moving back to, I'm going to be sharing another screen. Okay, and the other screen I'm going to be sharing, I'm going to be going back to, I'm going to be going back online, and I was, I guess, here on, so I'm going back to Yooda, that you're going to be opening an account with. It's free, by the way. You're not going to be charged of anything. And I'm going to be going back to my results. Okay. So here, the information I got before is on average for the month of October, I got 152,000 searches. And the CPC stands for the cost per click on Google. It's quite cheap. It's 24 cents. Yeah. So that means that during the month of October, it's 24 cents. And I guess if I use the same logic, we can probably pay, I don't have the information now, but we can probably pay as high as €1 during August. Why? Because the demand is probably higher by far. So the cost per click will be at least €1. But what I'm going to be asking you to do is, once you actually estimate the market volume in terms of volume and value, imagine you want to pitch to your boss or to someone the fact that it would be really cool to have a website to sell tattoos online. Yeah. And you're going to be using the hypothesis that your cost of goods, as we say, the cost of making of buying a tattoo for you is, let's say, 75 cents. So that's the cost of goods. And you can add up 25 cents to for mailing the tattoos in a regular mail. So that means that every time you sell a tattoo, it costs you €1. And if you sell the tattoo at an average of, let's say, €6, as we've seen before, I'll be interested for you to provide me an idea of if I were going to be launching a website, and if I were going to be doing advertising on Google at an average click of 24 cents in October, how many tattoos do I need to sell to break even my business, knowing that on average, every time I sell something, it costs me €1. And when I say to break even my business, I will assume that you had about 6,000 euros expenses to develop your website. So you need to break even, taking into account that you spent 6,000 euros to develop your website, and knowing that your cost of goods of making your product available and mailing it costs you 75 cents plus 25 cents or €1, and that you're selling on average a tattoo for €6, for example. I'm asking you how many tattoos you will need to sell if you were going to be supporting your launch with Google AdWords. When I say how many you need to sell to break even, okay? What I'm asking you to do is not complicated. It's simple math. You need to calculate what's your break-even point, knowing that you have 6,000 expensive, and every time you sell €6, it costs you €1. So you make a $5 profit or €5 profit. Okay? Clear to everyone? The second question I want you to solve.
It's clear. It's 2,000 titles, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
You were asking if we sell tattoos at €4 and it costs €1 to produce, and you have to put in €6,000 for the website.
Yes.
How many tattoos you have to sell to make like the website, like to pay for the website?
Yes.
The 2,000?
No, probably. I don't know. I'm not asking you now. I'm asking you to do that after. I don't know. I just gave numbers like this, but I want you to provide me an answer to that later on, after you evaluated the market value and volume.
Okay.
But indeed, it's probably around 2,000 indeed. Okay. The reason I want to introduce that is simply because then, if you're pitching your business to your boss, given the different hypotheses of the market value, then you can estimate a potential market size if you put more money. The potential more market size, it's say, if I want to get 10% market size, that will be, I will need to get to sell that amount of tattoos. How much will it cost me, etc., etc. It helps you build a case to develop and pitch your business. Okay. Any more questions before I leave you? And I am going to be stopping the recording here.